Hi friends and subscribers, welcome back, hope you're all doing well. So in this video I'm going to be ranking the studio albums of Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd are one of my favourite bands, so yeah, I'm going to rank all 15 studio albums, so no live albums, so Pulse or Delicate Sound of Thunder will not be included. Is There Anybody Out There will not be included. No compilations either. No, just the studio albums. So before I start, this ranking is just based on my opinion. It's my order of preference. It's how I like these albums. It's all subjective. If you want to give your ranking, then please feel free. So coming in at the bottom, I don't own every Pink Floyd album, by the way. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I have 9 of them on CD, and I've got 1 on cassette. So I've got 10 albums. I've only got 10. So yeah, but coming in at number 15, which is one that I don't have, and that's The Endless River, which came out in 2014. And yeah, I could never really get into this album. I can appreciate, the circumstances behind the album. I know they released it as a tribute to Rick Wright. And yeah, it has some moments. David Gilmour's guitar playing on it is really good. And the song on it, the closing track, Louder Than Words, which is the only song on this album to have lyrics, because it's an instrumental album. But yeah, Louder Than Words is a pretty decent song. But yeah, the album just, for me at least, it just drags for the most part. But this album, it is essentially just leftover material from the Division Bell sessions. So what I think they should have done with this is just released all this content as bonus material for a 20th anniversary deluxe box set of the Division Bell, as this album did come out. This was 20 years after the Division Bell, so I think that's what they should have done. That's just my opinion, but yeah, not a bad album. It's just not one that I gravitate towards. So that's why it's number 15. Number 14 is A Momentary Lapse of Reason, which came out in 1987. This was the first album without Roger Waters. Again, I don't own this one. Again, this doesn't really feel like a Pink Floyd album to me. It feels more like a David Gilmour solo album. And I personally think he should have released it as a solo album, to be quite honest. So yeah, it's really a Pink Floyd album in name only. And it's not a terrible album, although I don't think the 80s production on this album has aged very well. Although the 2019 remix, it's an improvement. I'll give it that. But yeah, a lot of the songs on here just aren't all that memorable to me. I don't really gravitate towards them. There's a few good ones on here. I think Learning to Fly is good. Dogs of War's pretty good as well. On the Turning Away. But as a whole, it's just one of those albums that it just doesn't click with me. So yeah, it's number 14. Number 13 is The Division Bell, which came out in 1994. After A Momentary Lapse of Reason, which didn't really feel like Pink Floyd, this actually does feel like Pink Floyd, so they're going sort of back to their signature sound. But yeah, I do like it's just a bit better than Momentary Lapse of Reason. But it's not an album that I've ever really gravitated towards. I know I'm saying that a lot. I know this album does have a lot of fans. I know there's Pink Floyd fans who absolutely love this album. Personally, I don't get it. If someone was to say this is their favourite Pink Floyd album, my question would be, why? I'm not trying to, invalidate your opinion. If you love this album, and if it's your one of your favourites by them, it's, you know, if you love it, you love it. If it's one of your favourites, it's one of your favourites. But yeah, it's just never been one of mine. It just doesn't click with me. But it definitely has some great moments. I think What Do You Want From Me is a great track. High Hopes is good. Lost for Words is decent enough. But yeah, but it's not one that I get into. But I do love that cover. That cover's great, and you've got Ely Cathedral in the background. Yeah, I like the cover more than I like the album itself. But yeah, again, it's not a bad album. But for me, it's just one of those albums that I think it's all right. But yeah, it's all right for me. It's just okay. But yeah, but to those who love this album, more power to them. And then number 12. I don't have this one on CD. I have this on cassette. It is The Final Cut, which came out in 1983, the last album to feature Roger Waters. And just like the Momentary Lapse of Reason, which felt like a David Gilmour solo album, this feels like a Roger Waters solo album. So it's a Pink Floyd album in name only. You know, Nick Mason and David Gilmour are just treated like session musicians rather than members of the band. So yeah, Roger sings on every track apart from Not Now John, which David sings on. But yeah, it's not a bad album. I don't think this album is as bad as people say it is. You know, I love Not Now John. That's a great song. Post-War Dreams, pretty good as well. The Fletcher Memorial Home. Yeah, The Gunner's Dream. Yeah, there's some great songs on here for sure. But yeah, not one of the greatest albums. But again, I don't think it's as bad as people say. I think this album's pretty decent. I think it's all right. So yeah, so that's my number 12. Number 11. Again, don't have this one. It's Umaga or Umaga, however you want to pronounce it. I'm pronouncing it as Umaga. So yeah, this came out in 1969. So this is only their 4th album. Now, generally, I love the early Pink Floyd stuff, but this is my least favourite album from the early period of Pink Floyd. You know, it's a double album. It's got one disc of live tracks and one of studio tracks. Now, the live recordings on this album are great. I love the live stuff on here. I really like the live version of Astronomy Domini. It's a great version. I'd still prefer the studio version of Piper at the Gates of Dawn, but I do like the live version as well. So yeah, the live recordings on here, yeah, very good. The studio stuff on here isn't that great though, apart from a few tracks. Grantchester Meadows is great. That's a great acoustic number. Was it Sisyphus? However you want to pronounce it. You know, that's pretty good. But then you've got, if I can remember the full title, several small species of furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict. Yeah, that's just a weird track. It's just a tape loop of animal noises. I can't say I like it very much. So yeah, there's moments on this album which just doesn't work for me. But there are moments on this album that I do enjoy. So yeah, the live disc is great. The studio disc, not so much, but there is some good moments. So yeah, not a bad album, but a fairly decent album, I will say. You know, it's an album that I can listen to. But yes, there you go. So now we're into the top 10. Now, everything from here on is either good or great. So my number 10 is Obscured by Clouds. This came out in 1972. This is the soundtrack to the French film La Vallée, I believe it's pronounced. I've never seen the film. But yeah, I think it's a good album. Again, not one of the best Pink Floyd albums of the 70s, but yeah, it's really good. I like When You're In, Burning Bridges, What's the Deal, 3-4, Childhood's End, Stay, Absolutely Curtains. Yeah, it's a good album, but I don't play it. I don't play it a lot, but when I do, I find myself enjoying it quite a bit. I like the cover as well. So yeah, that's my number 10. Number 9. Again, this is another one I don't have, but it is Atom Heart Mother, which came out in 1970. An album that I know a lot of people would rank higher. I get it. It's a really good album, but there's just 8 other albums that I prefer to this. But yeah, I like the cover as well with that cow on the front cover. And yeah, there's only a few songs on here, but they're all good. The Atom Heart Mother Suite, it's very long, but it's very interesting to listen to it and go all the way through it. It's really quite something. And you've got If, which is a great track. Summer 68 is great. And you've got Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which is just a weird, tape loop of, well, not really a tape loop, but it's just sounds of, eggs, of eggs cracking and frying, and yeah, just a guy named Alan eating breakfast. It's not really anything to it, but it's quite interesting. It's weird, but fun weird. So yeah, that's Atom Heart Mother. That's my number 9. Number 8 is More, which came out 1969. So this was the soundtrack to the film of the same name, which again, I've not seen the film. A lot of people rank this one really low because I think just because it's a soundtrack album, but quite honestly, I don't really have anything against soundtrack albums. I don't see what's wrong with soundtrack albums. If the music on them is good. And yeah, I think this is a really good soundtrack album. It's got the Nile song, which is Pink Floyd's heaviest song, the closest they did to hard rock, and it's excellent. It's an excellent track. And you've got some beautiful acoustic tracks on here as well. You've got Green is the Colour, Cirrus Minor, Cymbeline, The Crying Song. Yeah, it's just I really enjoy this album. I think this album is, I think it gets overlooked just because it's a film soundtrack. But it is still a Pink Floyd album because all the songs on here, it's all Pink Floyd on here, and they're all, it's not like stuff that was on previous albums. This was all new material that they recorded for this project. So yeah, but yeah, it's a good album, and I like the front cover as well. It's got the windmill on the front cover. Yeah, I don't have this album, but I'd like to get that one real soon. So that's number 8. Now into the top 7. These are like the essential Pink Floyd albums, as far as I'm concerned. The ones that I couldn't do without. So number 7, you might be surprised to see this one quite low, but I assure you that I do love this album. It's Animals, which came out 1977. And this is the 2018 remix, which is why the cover looks a bit different. I prefer the original cover, to be honest. But yeah, it's the Battersea Power Station, but it's in the modern day, 21st century, as opposed to the what it looked like in the 70s. but you still got the inflatable pig flying above it. You know, CD covers don't really do album covers justice. You know, it would look a lot better on vinyl. But yeah, it's a great album. You know, there's only 5 songs on here, but they're all damn good songs. You've got Pigs on the Wing Part 1, Dogs, Pigs 3 different ones, Sheep, Pigs on the Wing 2. You know, it's a great album. You know, there's not really much more I can say about it that hasn't been said. But yeah. Even though for some people it might be ranked too low, but there's just 6 more albums that I like more. But yeah, I don't deny the brilliance of this album. And number 6 is Medal. So this came out in 1971. And this was the album where arguably Pink Floyd started coming into their own, when they started to sound like the Pink Floyd that everyone knows. Even though the stuff they did before this was great. But yeah, this is just great, and I love the cover as well. The pig's ear underwater. You know, Pink Floyd they had such great album covers. So yeah, you've got One of These Days, A Pillow of Winds, Fearless, Saint-Tropez, and you've got the 24-minute Echoes, which, despite being 24 minutes, I don't think it drags at all. The only track on here I don't like is Seamus, and that's because of the dog barking sound effects on there. It wouldn't bother me so much if they used it at just the beginning of the song, but to have it pretty much throughout the whole song, it just irks me a little bit. The song itself isn't bad. It's a good song, but the dog barking just kind of spoils it for me. But apart from that, it is a terrific album. But it's my number 6. And now we're into the top 5. Number 5, Wish You Were Here. This came out in 1975. And I love that album cover with the businessman shaking hands with the man on fire. Yeah, just excellent cover. I love that. Again, everything on here is great. You've got Shine On You Crazy Diamonds, parts 1 to 5, which that song is about Syd Barrett. And yeah, during the recording of this album, Syd Barrett came into the studio, unannounced, and he was completely shaven. His head was shaved, his eyebrows were shaved, and nobody knew who he was for a long time. But yeah, even though he's not on this album physically, but in spirit, he's on this album. This album was about him. And you got Welcome to the Machine, Have a Cigar, which is sung by Roy Harper, because neither Roger Waters or David Gilmour couldn't sing it for some reason. They couldn't get it right, so they asked Roy Harper to sing it, which I think he does a good job. I didn't actually know that for a long time. When I first heard the song, I thought it was Roger singing. And you've got Wish You Were Here, which is another track it's obviously about Syd Barrett. That's a great song. And you've got Shine On You Crazy Diamond, parts 6 to 9. Yeah. Fantastic album. I love it. Number 4 is their masterpiece, Dark Side of the Moon. We all know Dark Side of the Moon. It needs no introduction. It's got such an iconic album cover with that prism. Yeah, this is a monumental album. I can't say anything about this that hasn't been said, and I don't think that I can do this album justice. But yeah, it's fantastic. I know for some people it's their favourite. but there's just three others that I like just a bit more than this. But yeah, I love this album, and I agree with pretty much everything that's said about it. And you can't really pick a favourite song off this album because, each song on this album just morphs into each other. So the whole album is just like one long song. But Money is such a great song, though. That would probably be my favourite if I had to pick. Also, Breathe in the Air is great. And Brain Damage, Eclipse, fantastic. Any Colour You Like, Us and Them, The Great King in the Sky. I mean, everything. The whole album, just, I can't fault it. It's a masterpiece. Number 3. It's The Wall. This came out in 1979. In my opinion, the last really great Pink Floyd album. Although some say Division Bell. But like I say, I'm not a huge fan of the Division Bell. I like bits of it, but yeah, for me, this was their last truly great album. So yeah, it's a double album. It's a double concept album. And I really enjoyed the concept behind this album. Fictional rock star, Pink. And we've seen the film as well, Bob Geldof. I like the album better than the film, to be honest. Yeah, and a lot of people think that this album is overrated, and that it would have been better as a single album. That it's too padded out. Quite frankly, I think that's absurd. I like it just as it is. It's just like saying that the Beatles' White Album would have been better as a single album. That, I think, is absurd. But yeah, I love... It's hard to pick a favourite song, but there's just so many great ones. In the Flesh, Thin Ice, Another Brick in the Wall, all 3 parts. I love all 3 parts of Another Brick in the Wall. Happiest Days of Our Lives, Mother, Goodbye Blue Sky, Young Lust, Comfortably Numb, which, yeah, it's been played to death. And it's not a song that I would, I would willingly, go out of my way to play on its own. But in the context of the album, yeah, I never skip it. It is great. Got Hey You, Is There Anybody Out There? Nobody Home, Run Like Hell. I love The Wall. I don't care if people think it's overrated. I adore this album. So that's why it's my number 3. Number 2, you might be surprised to see this one ranked really high. Because quite frankly, this album, every Pink Floyd album ranking that I've seen, this album gets ranked quite low, and I don't get it. It's Saucer Full of Secrets. It's their second album, which came out in 1968. So, yeah, this was a transitional album for Pink Floyd. It's the album where Syd Barrett leaves the band and then David Gilmour steps in. I absolutely love this album. I think it's a really underrated album. A lot of people say that this album isn't very good. I strongly disagree. What do we have on here? Let There Be More Light, Remember a Day, Set the Controls to the Heart of the Sun, and Corporal Clegg, which everybody likes to bash that song, but I fucking love it. And then you've got the title track, Saucer Full of Secrets. Probably my least favourite track on the album, but it's still good. And you got Seesaw. I love that track. And you got Syd Barrett's Jug Band Blues, that was the last song that he did for the band before he left. And it's so different from the lyrical content is so different from what he did before. It's a very important song, and I can't understand why they didn't release it as a single. Big mistake. They should have released it as a single. But yeah, I love Saucer Full of Secrets. I'm very fond of this era of Pink Floyd. You know, the early Floyd. Even though I'm not denying the impact of what came after, that was brilliant. That was amazing. But I have a soft spot for the early Floyd, and I love that album cover as well. And if you look closer, you can see Doctor Strange on there somewhere. And this was not long after the character of Doctor Strange was created. But yeah, I love Source Full of Secrets. Great album. So, which leaves me with my number one. It's the first Pink Floyd album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So this is the Syd Barrett album. I just love this album. You know, I have a real soft spot for this. You know, because I love Syd Barrett, you know. His singing voice is just great, and the lyrics that he writes, you know, yeah, they're childish lyrics, but it's the way that they're done. They're done in such a creative way. Like, nobody else could do what Syd Barrett did. I mean, the whole album is just fantastic. Astronomy Domini, Lucifer Sam, Matilda Mother, Flaming. Okay, maybe I could do without Power Talk H. You know, I always skip over that one, really. You know, instead of Power Talk H, I would have preferred it if they put See Emily Play on here, as that was released as a single, but it wasn't on the album. I do believe it was on the American release of the album. But yeah, I wish they'd put that on here instead of Power Talk H. But that's just a minor nitpick. And then you've got Take Up Thy Stethoscope and Walk, which is the first Pink Floyd song that Roger Waters sings lead vocals on. Interstellar Overdrive, The Gnome, Chapter 24, which might actually be my favourite Pink Floyd song, The Scarecrow, and Bike. So the whole album, except for Power Talk H, apart from that, the whole album is just great. It's just near perfect. You know, it's probably not as critically acclaimed as some of the albums that came later, but this is my personal favourite. So there you go. That's my Pink Floyd album ranking. I hope you enjoyed it. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe. And click the bell to get notifications so you don't miss out on future videos, future uploads. So, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.